Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, November 20th, 2022. Coming at you live from Florida Media in Rockville Center. Another big show here at Hockey Night in New York. Kevin Kurz of The Athletic will be joining us. With me tonight is Mr. Kurz of The Botta. My name is Sean Cuthbert. Welcome to the show. Chris Botta, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sean. Happy Thanksgiving week to everybody out there in Islanders country. Nice to be on.
Yes, sir. Time is flying. I can't believe it's the holiday season already, but we're here, and the Islanders season is in full swing. So, folks, before we dive into everything, I want to remind you all that we are proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Brand new location, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and, of course, UBS Arena Belmont. Also pleased to be sponsored by Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Make sure you hit them up this month. World Cup action going on over there. They're going to be showing every 11 a.m. game, 2 p.m. game. If you show up for 11 a.m., you get a free espresso. So get down to Lost Farmer Brewing, watch some World Cup soccer. I love it. I got the fever. Let's go. So, with that out of the way, Chris, here we go. Road trip. You kind of called it yourself here. 1-2 on the trip. They still have one more game tomorrow, of course, but they're going to Ottawa. They win that game. Have a bit of a rough outing down south in Nashville and Dallas. What did you see out there?
I thought they were probably due for a little bit of a humbling, was the term that we used. I used when predicted that we thought they'd win beat Ottawa.
Yeah.
And then I thought they'd lose the next two. I thought Dallas would be the toughest game. They hung in there. But as we get to this quarter pole of the season, and we're right around there,
right,
we're starting to see that this team is taking shape as to what we believe it's going to be, which is not one of those top teams that's like a lock 30, 40 games in to make the playoffs, to make the playoffs, but also, not a bottom feeder either. I think we're starting to see a few of those teams at the bottom.
Yeah.
The Islanders are in the middle, and that's okay. They got to solve the starts. Saturday was better, of course, against Dallas, but still defensively, not so great.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm kind of keying on for the week that we saw is the defensive zone coverage. Now, as you just said, the starts have been better. They scored the first goal against Ottawa. They scored the first goal against Dallas, and just overall looked very good in that first period against Dallas, and then until the wheels fell off in the third period. But you look at some of the goals that were scored against them, and you have some in-tight goals like Jamie Benn's goal just last night, and a couple of goals in these 3 games where it seems like they're getting a little lost or just, not covering as well as they should have in front of them, whether it's getting sticks, getting body on body, that sort of thing. And they're allowing these in-tight goals that, it's tough for any goaltender, whether it's Sorokin, Varlamov, or anybody else in the league. And I think that's kind of cost them a little bit. I'm looking at, what was that, in the Nashville game, and this is a guy who doesn't get in the lineup every night, but Ross Johnston was kind of out to lunch on one of those goals against, where his coverage was just, he was a little too respectful of Nino Niederreiter when he came in on the right-hand side, and he ended up firing that shot into the net. So it just seems like there's still some lapses mentally, as much as we want to talk about how good this team is defensively, and overall they generally are, but it seems like they're still prone to some mistakes here and there that are costing them, especially in these games.
I would say they have the players that should, it's the same group that should be good defensively, but they haven't put it together. Maybe it's a little bit of change in systems. I think we're still, where are they right now? Right? Keep in mind, we have to recognize that we do these shows on Sunday.
Correct.
And you're going off their 2 most recent games.
Right.
And it was 2-2 going into the third period on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Never mind the show. Of course, the bigger picture is the Islanders season.
Of course.
There was definitely a feel for if they could win this period, boy, this could propel them to like another level. And then they didn't. So they're coming up a little short. This is not Barry Trotz's Islanders of his prime years.
Right.
I did look it up. What's amazing is if you try to go to the 19-game mark of the 2 seasons, not the COVID season, but
right.
the better years. You know, the 1 year, 3 years ago, they were 15-3-1 at this point. They struggled toward the end, and I'll break out my notes. 2 seasons ago, 10-6-3.
Okay.
So, you know, they're 11-8 right now. So, doesn't really say much. You know, the other thing, it was the biggest takeaway was, wow, when Trotz was here, it was just freaking bananas. You had COVID. Obviously every season, but you had arena moves. You had Coliseum. You had Barclays. I mean, the 19th game, one of the years was, you know, February. It like everything, there wasn't hardly anything normal about his 4 years.
Correct, 100%.
There's another reason why I would have liked to have had him have one more year, but we'll move on from that. Go ahead.
Right, for sure. Well, it's funny, you talk about past records, and it just so happened I caught a quote on Twitter. It's like an Isles history count where they kind of do like this date in Islanders history or what have you, and I saw them tweet out that this time in the 1984 season, they were off to like a 10-7-1 start. So almost like identical. You know what I mean? So it's so funny because we say this almost every week now. Like, what does this record mean for this team? Where is this hole going to lead? Obviously, that went to a Stanley Cup final, right? Does that mean this is going to happen? No, of course not. Not necessarily. But we're still trying to gauge, you know, what this team is. But I do think, you know, you talk about the Barry Trotz team. I do think that Lane Lambert's team they're already kind of carving their own niche here as a New York Islanders team where, yes, it might be a hybrid of what Barry Trotz brought to the table, but I think the style that Lane Lambert has them playing is certainly his own as well.
And going back to how, like, the numbers can be whatever you want them to be, I was noticing this afternoon fans who really dig into the data, all of a sudden with the most recent data, it doesn't look so good, 5-on-5, goals against, probability, everything, but you're coming off 2 losses. So, you know, we could do this 2 games ago and it would have been a little bit different. So I don't think these 2 losses are the end of the world. I'll say the same thing if they lose to Toronto, but there is going to be a point where they're going to need some separation. It used to be, you know, get to 500, but not in the NHL, not for a very long time. It's like, how are you going to get to 10 games over NHL 500 and then above that? So they're a little bit above an average team right now. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's pretty much where I think a lot of us had them anyway.
I think that's average. That's correct. And I think, look, if they actually get the win tomorrow against Toronto, that you look at that as a successful road trip, 2-2. And usually that's the whole, you know, rule of thumb, right? You have a good home record and you at least break even on the road.
Yeah, especially playing against 3, what I would call 2 very good teams and then 1 or 2 okay teams.
Yeah, and I think that they were in both of those games against Nashville and Dallas, and for one reason or another, whether it was mental mistakes or whether it was, you know, one issue here or there, I mean, there were games that they could have won where it just didn't go their way. And I'll say this all season long, over the course of an 82-game season, you're going to have games go like that. They're just, sometimes they break your way, sometimes they don't. And, you know, one other thing I notice is the penalties. And the funny thing is, in the game against Ottawa, they took 6 penalties, and they still won that game. They killed 5 of 6. But it looks like there's maybe maybe I'm diving a little too far into this, but it seems like they're getting themselves into penalty trouble a little bit too much here and there. And I look at a guy like Casey Cizikas. He's leading the team right now with 23 penalty minutes, and I feel like that's typically not the case. He's usually a more disciplined player, and it seems like he's kind of getting himself into trouble more, a couple more hooks here and there. And I wonder if that's a product of him being on the wrong side of 30, maybe losing half a step and trying to catch up with guys. It could be coincidence, but just something that I've noticed. And usually he's a guy who stays pretty disciplined.
It is uncharacteristic because remember last year he had the one game where he just kept on going back and forth into the box, and it was just bad.
Yes.
He actually
this
came
is
out
carryover from last season.
And it was one game in particular, and I remember Trotz being asked about it, and they were able to write it off because it was so uncharacteristic of him not having a lot of minors like that for a guy who plays the way he does.
For sure.
You know, we'll keep an eye on that as well. Could be a little dinged up. You know, sometimes I'm quick to give these guys little excuses. Somebody like him, he deserves some excuses, right? He just he's shown too much through his career.
Oh yeah.
Well, you know, well, I think it's not such a bad thing that they dropped these 2 games. It's not such a bad thing that in Nashville, slow start again, and it looked like they were going to come back. In fact, Cizikas had a chance to tie it up shorthanded in the final minutes. I don't know what Nashville was doing, but But they learned the lesson that, all right, we're not going to be able to come back every time because it looked like it was going to. And then they go to Detroit and lose the third period. So not bad going into a game against Toronto, which is a real rivalry. That's a game that I think the Islanders want really bad. It means a lot to them. Toronto's better this year. Toronto is due for an offensive explosion. The Islanders are going to have to hold them off. I think the Islanders are going to have to really watch for that in the first period, not get Matthews on fire. But a little bit of a setback as if to say, okay, no, you're not going to run away with this. This isn't a complete run back and then run away with it and, oh, no, we're back. 11-8, respectable. Let's see what happens over the next week. Another very, very interesting week coming up.
Yeah, and I think you look at the numbers that you just mentioned now, 11-8, especially after the way they started. They had that 3-game losing streak. I think you're satisfied with that. Maybe you're not fully happy with it. Maybe you would have liked to see them get one more win here on that road trip. You look at games maybe against Detroit or the Arizona game probably sticks out a lot for people. But at the same time, it's still early. They're still finding their way, and I still think that this can end up being a good, successful season for them. And just to your point on the Predators game, I think the one difference in that not being another one add to the list of the comeback special that this team has been is that they let in that one extra backbreaker goal, which they hadn't done in the other comeback games.
Yeah, and then Dallas too, where it looked like maybe they'd come back, but then a face-off play makes it 4-2, puts the game out of reach. So I think things are working. I'm really, really happy that you got Kevin Kurz for this week, and thankful to Kevin for doing this in the middle of a trip that he's on, because Kevin brings great perspective as a writer. Had him on my show last year, too. I think you've had him on before, too. I think he's a perfect out. Okay, so
this is the first time. Oh,
So it'll be he's the perfect guest to have for
Absolutely. Speaking of Kevin Kurz, we're going to take a quick break. Thank you so much for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. And, of course, your favorite podcast providers are going to take that break. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the Cup. God damn it. I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu. You can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train rolls on here on Hockey Night in New York. And joining us on the line from The Athletic is Mr. Kevin Kurz. Kevin, been playing a little hard to get here, trying to get you on the show. Finally got you on. Really, really pleased to have you. How you doing tonight?
Yeah, pretty good. No, timing was right. I flew back from Dallas today. Didn't go to Toronto, so just a lazy night in. So more than happy to join you guys.
Fantastic. Really appreciate it. I'm here with Chris Botta, and you're talking to Sean Cuthbert. So, Kevin, I wanted to start with Matt Barzal just because, look, he's finally off the schneid. Even though in a losing effort he gets the 2 goals against Dallas. Just overall, how has his season looked? He's over a point per game now. He's got 21 and 19. How's Barzal look to you? And was the goal issue even an issue?
Well, I still think it was an issue. I think he's a guy that when you're on after the long-term contract that he signed, he's got to be a guy that gets 15 to 20 a year in my mind. And I did ask him point blank after the game last night, was it weighing on you at all? And he was adamant that it wasn't. I have a little bit of a hard time believing that. Nobody who is a competitive, proud hockey player wants to see a 0 next to their name. In the goal column. I don't care how many points you have otherwise. But that's what he said. So that's what I printed. And I just think if you look at his game overall, there have been some times where we've seen him pass up shots from high danger areas, and you'd like to see him, I think, take a little more looks on net, put a few more pucks on net rather than just always thinking pass first. He's always going to be one of those guys, right? We all know the types that would rather make a play than score a goal, and he's one of those guys. But if you look at the underlying numbers, also though, he was getting a lot of chances. He was among the team's leaders in shots on goal. So I think it was a little bit of bad luck combined with not taking enough shots, but I do think overall he's looked pretty good, and he seems to be enjoying playing Lane Lambert's system. I think we still see some of the things that we've gotten used to seeing with Barzal, where maybe he just hangs onto the puck a little bit too long at times. But he's still in the developing part of his career, as far as I'm concerned. And when you're talking about a guy that's averaging over a point per game first quarter season, I mean, it's a pretty darn good start so far in my mind.
No question, Kevin, and that's a perfect segue. You mentioned the first quarter of the season, so we're kind of in a place where maybe we can start making a little more sharp assessments of Lane Lambert hockey, as you call it. And what are some strengths and weaknesses that you've seen out of this system so far? Now that we're nearly 20 games in, what's been working for them? What hasn't? And is this a system that they can play with long term to finally make it through an 82 game schedule and get into the playoffs?
Well, I think you have to start with the fact that I'm pretty sure they still lead the league in goals from defensemen, and I think that would be surprising to anyone if you were told that before the season started, that this blue line was going to lead the league in goals, and we'll see if it ends that way. But I think we've always liked, most people like this blue line. They think it's certainly the top 4 is pretty good, but I don't think we ever thought it was going to be that kind of a productive blue line. So that's certainly a positive. But it's, and then on the other hand, and when you're trying to weigh what we've seen from Lane so far, there have been too many times where the team hasn't come out ready to play. Right. And to me, that's on the coaching staff. The wild dips between, there's obviously going to be ups and downs throughout the course of a game, throughout the course of a season. But this team, it really does strike me that they can look absolutely terrible for 20 minutes and absolutely great for another 20 minutes, all in the same game. And that's something that the coaching staff has to figure out why. And I don't think they figured out why yet. And maybe it's just the fact that this team just doesn't have the ability to play. Obviously, no team has the ability to play its A game for 60 minutes every single night. But these guys, they've found it in spurts, but they just haven't found it in long enough stretches. And again, I think that's on the coaching staff to work that out. But overall, I do think this is a pretty positive start for Lane Lambert and his staff. The power play has started to come around a little bit, and I know that's maybe at the expense of the penalty kill dropping off a little bit. So that's good. The top unit looks completely different with J.G. Pajot out there in Kyle Palmieri's place. I think that's for a couple different reasons. But yeah, I just think the starts, and when I asked Lane after the Nashville game, is it a trend? I mean, it was before the Nashville game, is this a trend or what's, he said it's not a trend, but it's been happening. So I'm not quite sure what that means. To me, that means it is a trend. it's again, and I also think the other thing you have to keep in mind is that sometimes it does take teams a little while to get used to a new coach, and this isn't an all new coach. I know Lane's been here before, but the assistants are new. Sometimes it does take some time to really get used to playing that system without thinking. And we've seen it in spurts. We just haven't seen it consistently enough yet for my liking.
For sure, Kevin. And just to spin off of that, we talk about Barzal having 21 points in 19 games. You have two other guys in Brock Nelson and Anders Lee who are essentially playing at a point-per-game clip as well. So with that in mind, and not to say that this was necessarily your thought process, but a lot of people going into this season thought that a scoring winger was going to be the biggest need for this team. Is that still the case when you're seeing the numbers going up in this team, that they're scoring more goals, their goal differential is up there, and they're kind of doing what I think nobody really expected? If you were going to look at where they're at this season and the offensive production that they have, do you think that that's still the biggest need for them, or maybe they look elsewhere, maybe on the defensive side? What do you think?
It's 100% the biggest need. And, this is nothing against Ross Johnston, who I think can contribute in a fourth-line role, but Ross Johnston should not be in the top 9 at the expense of Josh Bailey. And that was just sort of a baffling decision in that Nashville game. They could have used Josh Bailey, and I know Josh Bailey hasn't been lighting the world on fire, but they could have used him in that game instead of Ross Johnston, who sat on the bench
definitely on that
for the last 30 minutes. Yeah. So what's going on? Anthony Beauvillier now scoreless in 8 games. Oliver Wahlstrom's been up and down. I think he has points in 3 out of the last 4. Bailey obviously has been inconsistent. So there are still some real issues with that group because, as you said, it's been very top heavy with Barzal, Lee, Nelson really driving the bus. Peugeot's done some nice things. Zach Parise kind of is what he is at this point. The fourth line, I think, has been fine and has done its job more nights than not. But yeah, they need some more dynamic, skilled wingers and wingers that are going to play much more consistently. And, we saw Nikita Soshnikov make the team out of camp, and he didn't have much impact in the 3 games he got in. I don't really see anything down below in Bridgeport yet that in terms of a player that's ready to come up and make an impact. Maybe at some point this season that'll happen, but I don't think there's anything down there that's going to be any better than what the team has right here. So at some point they're going to have to add from the outside and find a scoring winger. Maybe it's a superstar. Maybe it's a Patrick Kane. Maybe it's somebody else that might become available, but at some point that's going to have to be addressed. And I think, you hope these young guys are going to come around, and particularly Beauvillier and Wahlstrom. But they've both been pretty inconsistent. And I don't think if you're going to be a Stanley Cup contender, you've got to be a little bit more sure you're going to get production out of some of those top 9 wingers that hasn't been consistent enough yet.
Hey, Kevin, it's Chris. How's it going?
Good, Chris. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for doing this. I know you're on the road a lot, and I appreciate you doing this. I'm always interested in some of the inside hockey stuff, behind-the-scenes stuff. I learned yesterday that the team, they said it on the broadcast, that the team went to Ottawa, but then came back to New York instead of going to Nashville for 2 nights or spending an extra night in Ottawa and therefore making this a full week-long trip. I'm fascinated by that because teams always like to say it's good to get on the road and bond as a team and all that stuff. You worked for a team, for the fans who don't know. Kevin also worked in the PR business with the Flyers, so he traveled with the team. You've covered a team. I'm not saying it's why they lost. I'm not making too big a deal. It's fun for me. Do you have any insights or thoughts on that decision?
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. Because they did get into practice before they flew to Nashville and I'm going to screw up the days of the week, but I guess that would have been on Wednesday, right?
But they could practice in Nashville.
They could have practiced in Nashville, and I always think in terms of teams always have their annual rookie party, right? Well, to me, that would have been a nice little opportunity to do it.
They would have lost either way.
Get that out of your system. I do think there's value, and this is just maybe this is just me based on the coaches I've covered, but I coach Pete DeBoer, who I got a chance to talk to in Dallas. I guess that was yesterday. He was someone that really valued getting the team together on the road in a social situation, hang out with each other, go out, have a couple beers. Obviously, don't do anything too wild, but go to dinner together, spend some leisure time together. And I think that is important at the beginning of the season. Now, this group really isn't much different from the group last year, so maybe that's not as important. But, yeah, I was a little surprised. I would have thought they would have gone right to Nashville. I know there's a trip in December where they play Boston, and then they have an extra night, an extra day off between the Boston game and a game in Arizona. And they are flying right from Boston to Arizona, I think.
Good to get there for the time difference sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's what they're doing. But, maybe they do. I don't know if any of that's set in stone yet or anything, but I would think they would do that. And maybe you get a day off and play golf together in Arizona, right? And then you play the Coyotes. So,
I was definitely interested in your take.
Yeah. At the same time, this is also a group with some older players and some kids. So I'm sure on many levels they appreciate getting to spend an extra night with the kids before they're off on another week-long road trip.
Absolutely. And then in Nashville, you wound up being able to interview Lou Lamoriello. I believe Andrew might have with you, because I saw some quotes in Newsday today from that. I'm curious as to is there kind of like a standing invitation for Lou to talk through Kimber, the PR director, or did you specifically, were you guys looking for Lou, because the team was doing well, and did you ask for him in that particular moment?
Yeah, that was just something we just requested for before the Nashville game. I think maybe just to catch up more than anything. I don't think it was for any specific reason, but fortunately he was amenable to it, and obviously we didn't learn a whole lot, but I think anytime the general manager speaks, it's noteworthy, and that's stuff that we should pass along to the fans.
Yeah, and he didn't hide behind the slow starts, and I thought that was the most direct thing. So that was a great piece, and the way you wove it into your game, which then they beautifully got off to another slow start, which is always nice when they do that for the screenwriters. And then also, but Lane, he is, of course. I understand he's not going to say it's not a trend. It almost seems like a Spinal Tap thing, right? Where he acknowledges it, but he's not going to use the actual word. But he's been he could be critical at times. He's not saying nearly, nothing compared to Barry. We get that. But in his own way, like you could see it on his face when you guys are talking to him post game, and he will, I think somebody kind of set him up with a little soft one last night about, like, hey, good effort, bad result, and he kind of didn't stand for that. So are you appreciating his honesty? Are you seeing some good insights there where he's being fair, even if he's being brief?
Well, you're right in that he doesn't say a whole lot, and there's not, we've asked him a couple times dating back to when Josh Bailey came out of the lineup against Tampa, and never really got an answer as to why Josh Bailey came out of the lineup. And then, he says Ross Johnston is in the lineup because of it was opponent specific, but I thought that was kind of, I would have liked maybe a little bit more insight on some of the lineup decisions, frankly. I don't really give him any, I'm not one that's going to give him a hard time over not revealing the goalie or the active lineup, because I feel like a lot of coaches do that nowadays, and that's not necessarily important. We'll find out who's in the game when the game starts. I don't think anyone's really sitting on the edge of their seat wondering if it's going to be Robin Salo or Sebastian Aho as the sixth defender, right?
If you haven't figured it out by now.
Yeah. And the starting goalie, we can always figure that out 9 times out of 10 just based on who comes off first. So that stuff doesn't really bother me. I thought he was insightful a little bit before the game yesterday when we asked him about his coaching style, and that was really a line of questioning that began with a conversation I had with Cal Clutterbuck about how does Lane handle these, when he's pulling a guy like Josh Bailey out of the lineup, how does he handle it? And he just said Lane's very direct, and players want to know where they stand. We know where we stand with him, and Lane pretty much echoed what Cal said. So I thought that was interesting. I wish we would get a little bit more insight on certain things at certain times. I think, though, that's just sort of his personality, and probably also a function of who he works for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're talking to Kevin Kurz, The Athletic. Kevin, the last one from me before we let you go. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but you kind of already alluded to the fact that you're not convinced that they're a Stanley Cup contender. They need a scorer. But they're currently sitting, at least going into today, they were sitting in third place in the Metro, obviously a playoff position. They have 4 games coming up this week, so we don't even know if they're going to meet that cutoff yet for Thanksgiving. That remains to be seen. But have you seen enough out of this team to be a playoff contender at this point?
I do think so, because I think they're going to figure out at some point to play a little bit more consistently. It starts for me in net. I think it's the best goalie tandem if you combine the two in the NHL, and that's really the foundation that you can build your whole game off of, right? Is those two goaltenders, and so that's probably the biggest reason why I like what the defenders are doing. I like Sebastian Aho's game. I think the top 6 is in pretty good shape right now. I think Noah Dobson will continue to get better. Everyone knows at this point, I think, around the league what their biggest issue is. They need a little bit more skill on the wings if they're going to be taken seriously. But you look at the Metro Division, I mean, every team seems to have some issues right now, and the Islanders probably have fewer than the rest of them. You know, the Rangers have been up and down, and the Penguins and the Capitals have both gotten off to rough starts. Are those two teams that are just too old and too over the hill at this point? The Blue Jackets are a mess. The Flyers, I don't think anyone's going to take them seriously to remain in position. So, I don't know what the hell's going on with the Devils. They're 15-3.
What is going on?
Originally I thought that was the team that the Islanders were going to have to worry about, but maybe not. Maybe if the Penguins and the Capitals can't get it together, and I think the Capitals especially don't really, they don't look like a playoff team to me right now. So if you ask me right now, are the Islanders going to be the playoffs? I would say yes. I think they're going to find a way to get in.
Well, Kevin, absolute pleasure having you on the show. Fantastic stuff, and hope to have you on again down the road.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, anytime.
Thanks, Kevin.
Awesome.
Thanks
so
guys.
much, Kevin. All right, folks.
Sure.
That was the great Kevin Kurz of The Athletic. Finally getting him on the program. Chris, ever since he started covering the Isles for The Athletic, I've been trying to get him on. It just didn't work out. Finally got him, and he gave us a great spot.
He wanted to not spoil you too early.
He was going to tease.
The one thing I will say, the one thing I'm mindful of, I was when I did the thing last year, and I am when I reach out to people is. There's a lot of podcasts out there.
Sure are.
I'm proud of what you've done and what little thing we got going here with Christian.
Hell yeah.
But I am mindful of the fact that, using Kevin as an example, that, if he was to say yes to everyone, plus on top of that, there's all the Canadian shows. So like when they're playing Toronto, everybody's going to want to talk to him and answer.
Sure.
The little bit that I was like around the team on the writer side, like the requests I got were a lot. Not coal mining, not complaining. I always these are not bad problems to have.
Sure.
But, think about what it must be like for a Ray Farrow. He's always being asked. So when I ask him for one a season. So he ain't coming back this year.
Damn it. All right, that's fair. That's fine. Yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah. But Kevin, as always, is very good. He, at the end, playoff team. I think that's the clip you put out.
Oh, yeah.
And I agree with him. But he also, was pretty critical early on about the lack of production from some key players.
Yeah, and it's something to keep an eye on, and that's kind of why I wanted to throw him that question, because, I mean, I don't know. Look, I haven't looked back, to be completely honest with you, but I'm pretty sure we haven't hit the 20-game mark in recent seasons and had 3 guys playing at a point-per-game clip. And maybe it has, and they fell off later on in the season. But I just think overall, and this is the biggest difference for me, and I think it's pretty obvious for anybody that's watching, is literally just how much more this team is scoring. I mean, you even look at these games that they lost. Yeah, they only got 2 against Dallas, but they lose 5-4 to Nashville. And I haven't looked at the average, but I'm sure they're still averaging over 3 goals a game, which they struggled to get to the last couple of seasons. You know what I mean? So they've definitely changed that perspective through 19 games under Lane Lambert, where this team can score by committee, but they can score. And I think Kevin's right that they probably still need some star power on the wing, somebody who can be more reliable, more consistent when you have guys like Beauvillier, Wahlstrom struggling. But on the flip side of that, he mentions names like Parise and Pajot, and they're doing the jobs that they were expected to do in the first half of last season. And Kyle Palmieri's name didn't come up, but he's another guy too. He's scoring a lot of goals now. And it looks like they're much more, those guys who are relatively new are much more comfortable now playing, I suppose, regular season hockey for the New York Islanders. And because you had Pajot and Palmieri were guys that really hung their hats on the playoffs. And even other guys like Beauvillier and Bailey who have struggled here, they have shown up in the playoffs, so that's promising. So if this team can get through an 82-game season, then maybe we're not complaining so much about the lack of production in guys like Beauvillier and Bailey.
The guy who I haven't mentioned much on this show since I've been doing it with you, you do, but I would probably be the biggest difference maker of the guys I sometimes I underrate unfairly is Pajot. I think the best example I can give you is that when you would hear his name said last season, it was kind of like, yeah, Pajot.
Where's he been?
And but on a night like tonight, when Kevin Kurz brings him up, it's with this energy, and you smiled, and it's like, yeah, that guy. The guy wins a lot of the face-offs. The guy is making things happen. The guy is out there on special teams. So a big difference, and a guy I don't give enough credit to.
No, you're right. And Andrew Gross had glowing things to say about him last week. The week previous, I believe, was when Stefan co-hosted with me. He went on a whole honorable mention for him in the Hero of the Week, talking about Pajot and the face-offs that he's winning. So, yeah, I think that he's been a huge part of this team, and he had a couple of power play goals this week. So he's definitely, stepping up, I suppose you could say, compared to last season where, like you said, everybody's kind of like, where is this guy?
Kevin, great insight on that road trip. I thought it was notable. They came home. I didn't want to put him in position to say it. I do wonder if it was just like, you know what? I don't want the guys to have an extra night in Nashville. Fun place. That could have been it, or just making this trip a little bit shorter. So you get it right. They went home. They usually don't. A lot of times they don't. New York teams do have the position to do that because they could play in Ottawa. I used to do those trips. The planes are probably faster now, Sean. Yes, I get that. It was so long ago. I worked for the team, but like we could sometimes land in Republic and Farmingdale at 12:15. I was home by 1 a.m. So right, they play a 7 o'clock game. I'm home. Early. So they are able to do this. To me, it was more just like, hey, do you give the guys that week? So that was interesting. And also, there aren't a lot of reinforcements in Bridgeport. We knew that going in. We know that This is not a deep team. This team is pretty settled. The guys who are there now are right to think that there's nobody really pushing for their jobs. Sooner or later, though, if they don't certain guys don't step it up, they'll be taught that lesson that's not necessarily true. It should be noted that when Soshnikov came back from the NHL to Bridgeport on Friday, the healthy scratch for Bridgeport, and it's okay. He's a kid, but it was William Dufour.
Right, but I'm glad you mentioned Bridgeport, and even though, like you said, maybe nobody's been banging on the door right now, but they're off to a great start, and you're seeing some guys put up numbers that maybe you weren't expecting. Like you look at Ishkakov, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but rookie of the month, I believe he got for October. So that's a pleasant surprise, especially in a system that there really is a dearth of help right now down there. So if you can kind of start to slowly collect guys like him and Balduke, who's having a very good season on the defensive end of things, and you have Ratu and Dufour who are still finding their way. I think Dufour scored either today or last night.
That would have been his fifth.
So those guys are slowly coming along. So even if now is not the time for one of those guys, maybe one of them do start knocking on the door later on, especially if names that we keep bringing up here continue to struggle.
And, I think we've each brought this fellow up once or twice early, but now an established true journalist like Kevin Kurz has brought up the name Patrick Kane. And I was skeptical at the start of the season about that happening, but the Islanders playing themselves into position, it's kind of funny, right? Because the players earn that chance to bring in somebody to make them better. Now, of course, Kane comes in usually means somebody's got to go, or more than one person's got to go. But that is a conversation, and it's okay to say this on November 20th or whatever it is today. Let's go with 20th.
No, you're right.
That
it only says Sunday on the screen tonight.
And I know they're not the only team. There'll be 6 teams in competition. He is very much the kind of player I believe that Lou Lamoriello would be interested in and would go all in on at the trade deadline if that opportunity is there for him.
So I'm glad you brought that up because it raises an interesting thought. And you talk about how these teams earn that right to get a star player or some help brought into the team, added to the team for a playoff run, maybe a Stanley Cup run if you're lucky, right? But then there's also another side of that I've heard where, this team is earned to be here, and we didn't want to shake things up. We didn't want to bring anybody in from the outside, and we didn't want to lose anybody on this team because they won the division, came close to winning the division. They earned the right to be there. So is that kind of the flip side to that where, okay, they earned the right to get somebody added to the team, but then also, how are you going to not break us up, but I guess take a piece out that got us here in order to hope to improve the team with somebody else.
Yeah, and that's not how a championship team or franchise would not operate in the latter way, right? And we happen to live in the place where, when you think about just about any sport, story time, 42 years ago.
Let's hear it.
They traded two guys. The Islanders traded two guys who were with the team.
Yeah.
I mean, think about Billy Harris. By the way, Billy Harris, the guys love him. In clubs in L.A. He's a popular guy. They traded Billy Harris and Dave Lewis, who were original guys who had been there through all that.
Great point.
In March.
Yeah.
To bring in Butch Goring. So I know they lost in the playoffs in 78 and 79, and those were considered disappointments, and there was a chance that they were going to have to make some sort of move.
Right.
But if you were to go on that theory that, we earned this chance, if you have the opportunity to get yourself better, you make yourself better.
No,
and Patrick Kane would do it. It's funny, right? I understand, we talk about it, you don't make 6-for-1s or whatever, but there isn't anything. There's no combination of players currently on this team, plus other assets, that they wouldn't be better by getting Patrick Kane. They wouldn't be trading somebody on their team today for Patrick Kane, who would then be a lateral move. That would be a big step. They're not trading Barzal for Kane, is my point. They're not trading Brock Nelson for Kane. They're not trading the goalie for Kane. So, and no, I don't think they're trading the top two defensemen, probably top three.
Right.
So it would be an automatic upgrade. It would be you'd be paying the price again down the road, and the Islanders have a few of those things.
I was just gonna play devil's advocate.
It would be an immediate upgrade. I'm not advocating for the deal. I'm just saying it's not going to. I heard from fans, well, they're automatically better because they don't have Chara and Green anymore. They okay. Well,
we've said that a lot on this show too. Guilty as charged.
Let's raise the bar on
right
for improving the team. But Kane would be an upgrade.
I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
Yeah, especially if they don't give up the guys you're talking about. No, I think
I'm
you're
the first one to say I'm not into the analysis. I don't bring the hockey thing, but I feel pretty.
You got to bring it.
I feel pretty comfortable in saying Patrick Kane would be an upgrade.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. We're gonna go with that. So I think we covered the games this past week well enough. You guys know the scores. You guys know who won, who lost, right? I think we covered that well. We talked about the pros, the cons, and I think they're still in a fine spot. They got a busy week coming up, as we talked about. So why don't we talk about that busy week and get into what's on tap? All right, so what's on tap? Here we go. 4 games coming up. We already talked about one tomorrow in Toronto. They play the Maple Loafs or the Maple Leafs. I like to call them. Yeah, let's go. Wednesday, they come back home to play Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. A little Thanksgiving Eve tilt. Then on Friday, they go into Columbus. And then a back-to-back back home. They host the John Tortorella-led Philadelphia Flyers. What say you?
I can't wait for that Edmonton game. I haven't been to a game this year. It's a game I'm hoping to try to get to.
Okay.
I'm envious of those who have tickets. I think that I just have such great memories when I worked for the team. We often played on Wednesday and Saturday, and sometimes at home on Friday too. It was always even when we were bad, and we were bad a lot when I was there. But it was always such a great time. So many people coming back, coming home from college, coming home to see their family. Yeah. I'm just a big, big fan of this week, and to know that they're playing Edmonton in that beautiful UBS Arena, that should be a special night. So another reason why you'd like to see them handle Toronto. I wonder if Toronto's finally going to wake up offensively Monday or on a more consistent basis. That back end of the week, could be a little tricky. The thing with the Flyers is that they're playing hard under Tortorella.
They are.
But they're thin to begin with, and now they're starting to lose guys. Konechny is out.
Right.
Van Riemsdyk is out, and I don't believe, I know Van Riemsdyk's out a long time. So, sooner or later, it doesn't really work. Columbus, maybe that Columbus game's going to be a tough one. So I'm not going to, I did well last week. We did well last week predicting. I'm not going to go game by game. I'm just going to say these next two are going to be really fun to watch, and those two on the back end, they're going to be challenging.
All right, so last week we talked about what record we thought they were going to have.
I just said I'm not going to predict this time.
Well, I think you should. I think you should, Chris. I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, if we were going to always play back the segments when I do get it right, and like I said,
what? You're 1 for 1. You're 1 for 1. You did great last week.
All right, so I'm going to go, but we went individual games. Okay, I'm going to go lost to Toronto.
Ugh.
Beat Edmonton.
Okay.
Beat Philly. It's the 4th game.
Yes.
Friday is in Columbus, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Black Friday in Columbus.
The cannons are going to go off, aren't they?
You think so, huh? Johnny Gaudreau's going to put up 3 because he got booed in the last one.
I know everybody's giving Johnny. He was already asked, "Does he have any regrets?" Especially with Jersey doing so well, or whatever.
And of course, he'll admit it, right?
But, I in his defense, these are 7-8 year commitments. These are life commitments. So we can't go on this based on the first 20 games. Columbus doesn't look good, and
no, they don't.
But I would think they'll get better eventually over the course of his contract. It's just a little early for him to be saying he has regrets. Jersey, he could look at that and say, well, I would have fit in cap-wise, and I'd be with all that young talent.
Right.
But he says he chose geographical reasons and franchise reasons, so we get sidetracked. I'll go, I feel like I'm taking a little bit of an easy way out. I didn't last week, but this week I'm just going to go 2-2, which, by the way, isn't good. If this is a better team, it's a week that they should go 3-1. By the way, no extra points. They're a flat.
Everything has either been regulation.
That's going to end.
They've either won in overtime or lost in regulation.
One of these 4 games is gonna go to overtime.
All right.
So, but I will go 2-2.
All right, fair enough. So I'm going to go 3-1. I'm going to be a little more optimistic. I'm going to flip.
You were last week too.
I was, and it didn't go well for me. Although I did call the Ottawa game.
We both did. We said that was the one game we thought you were safe putting money down on.
That's
this
right.
Country. Whether they listen, I don't know. I haven't gotten any thank yous, I could tell you.
Sorry, Chris. So I'm going to flip-flop Toronto and Edmonton with you. I think they take Toronto down tomorrow. Oh. Then I think they drop Wednesday against the Oil. But then they win back-to-back against Columbus and Philly. That's my prediction, which is worth absolutely nothing. Which is also why I don't gamble.
I just factor, by the way, when I go to my phone, it's for the show. I just want everybody to know this. I got my notes, and then I got my NHL app.
You're not checking your texts?
I'm not texting my wife, Catherine, or anything like that. So what I'm interested in on Edmonton is where are they? So they're in New Jersey Monday. All right. So, all right. I mean, you wouldn't – it's not a bad,
which is obviously a loss. So,
but my point is that they've arrived. They will have arrived in the East. They're here now, and they're settled in. As opposed to sometimes that first game's like just like I thought Dallas might struggle, and they did against the Islanders early in that game because they were coming off a Florida trip and a game in Boston. So you may be right, but I'm going to stick with. We should probably start getting into individual wagers here, but I'm going to stick with the loss in Toronto and win in Edmonton.
All right.
I win against Edmonton. Sorry.
There you have it, folks. That is what's on tap. And I think now we'll just swing it right into the Hero of the Week. So, Ed, how you doing back there, Ed? What's going on?
Let me unmute myself. I'm doing great.
Yeah?
We're going to go right into Hero of the Week. Why not?
Let's hit those buttons, buddy.
Let's hit the buttons. Okay.
That is not the correct button.
Oh, it is now.
Welcome back.
It really isn't.
Missed you too. Now kick up your feet.
That's the one.
There we go, folks. When you hear this song, that means it is time for the Hero of the Week. Brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero, which this week is the Deli, featuring grilled roast beef, sautéed onion, mushroom, fresh mozzarella, all on a toasted garlic hero. Fantastic. Head on in to the Huntington Blue Line Deli and Bagels location. Mention Hockey Night New York and get half off the Deli. So, with that out of the way, Christopher Botta, who is your hero of the week.
I want to just preface this by saying my hero of the week not being a current player has nothing to do with them being 1 and 2.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with that. There were some good
Appreciate the background.
My hero of the week is somebody who I don't know, who I know the fans have come to like over the years, and now he's doing a spectacular job on television, and that's Thomas Hickey.
Hey, there we go.
I mean, really, it is not easy. No matter how polished somebody might be, and he is, you just don't turn it on. So there's natural gifts there. There's a good presence, very insightful. My one hope for him, because I'm never always going to be just totally Pollyannish, is that he just doesn't fall into the trap of making everything sound like it's great no matter how the team does, and he hasn't yet. But I don't want to see that, Mr. Hickey, please. But really, a really great debut for the Islanders on TV. Good hire by MSG. Whoever else recommended him, guess he was in the area. I wanted to stay part of the team. They have some openings there. There was a kind of a carousel of people over the last couple of years.
Sure, yeah.
Carter was doing games. Ricky was doing games.
Right.
I think Hickey is a good staple there, and really impressed. So welcome to doing this, and great job, and keep up the good work. Hero of the week, Thomas Hickey.
I think that is an excellent choice. And yeah, I didn't even know he was on the radar for something like that. I didn't know he was maybe doing any background stuff, maybe preparing for it, who knows. But he has slipped in very well, very comfortably. He does a good job. I think him and Shannon bounce off of each other really well. So, and from all you ever read or heard about him when he was on the team, beloved in that locker room. I mean, he was a big part of that team, and I think it's wonderful that he's found a way to still be with the team and be a part of it. I'm sure guys like Lee, Nelson, and Bailey and all those guys are happy to know that he's kind of still around, even if he's not in the locker room playing games with them anymore.
And I don't know this for sure, but to answer your question, I know, when Ray did my media show last year, others, they talk about a lot of times they do just take players and just kind of throw them into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
I get the sense, I'm not saying he's had a lot of preparation for this, but I get the sense that people with MSG Network around the Islanders have done some work with him, so that he literally wasn't just thrown out there. There was probably an audition to a certain extent, an interview, and whether it's Shannon perhaps spending extra time with him working really hard at it, breaking down tape of watching the other announcers and what they do.
Yeah.
But he's come in pretty solid, so much so that I would think, and I would like to think he's thought of it, or his agent has, but the NHL Network studio is not too far away from here. They're always looking for people to pop in on.
Sure.
You talk about a parade of people who go through there. So I could see him in that studio from time to time as well.
Okay, right on. So now I guess it's my turn to give my hero of the week.
Who is it, Sean?
And that is, you know what? I was going to pick this guy, but then I looked at his – now Lane Lambert said he was tired, and Matt Barzal actually addressed this as well. He said he had himself a long shift. So I was going to go with Matt Barzal, put up a couple of assists. He obviously got off the schneid with the goals. He got 2 goals in the losing effort against Dallas. But that play on the Fox goal, I had to move on to somebody else. I had to move on to somebody else.
You're a tough grader.
Hey, listen. I mean, if you're going to be a hero, you gotta live up to the name.
They lost the game. You got to
exactly. So I decided to go with a guy who you brought up earlier. We started talking about a little bit, and that is J.G. Pageau. The 2 power play goals this week, also had an assist in the 3 games this past week. And look, we kind of already discussed him, so we don't have to dive back into it. But he's been playing great all season. I think it's another good week for him, and he's doing great work in the power play, like Kevin mentioned before. Those face-offs are critical, and he's been lights out on the face-off this year, and they're a huge difference whether on special teams, whether it's power play or penalty kill. But the great thing is he's not just a power play specialist in that he wins the face-off and then he's a non-factor on the power play. He's scoring goals, he's involved, he's making plays. So J.G. Pageau, my hero of the week.
As somebody who plays ice hockey,
Indeed.
What would you say when J.G. Pageau is going well? What is he doing right?
He's tenacious. And that's why he's on the penalty kill. I mean, look, just talked about his face-off prowess, which is going to get you on special teams, right off the bat, as long as you can hold your own, right, in those situations. But what I love about his game, and this is why I mentioned guys like Casey Cizikas being personal favorites of mine, is this guys they get out there and they throw everything on the table. And what's all the more impressive about J.G. Pageau is he doesn't have that size. He's a smaller guy, but he still makes it work, and he still can get under players' skin. He can still, work the corners, whether it's, he's up against another 5'9" guy or a 6'3" guy. And when his game is going, that's the kind of game he plays, and which is why, I alluded to it previously, he's so tailor-made for the postseason, because that's the kind of game that wins hockey games, is that tenacious play, and where you get the unsung heroes, like the Cizikas in the playoffs. The Matt Martin's getting a couple of goals here and there in the playoffs, and J.G. Pageau, and you can go down the list, and Palmieri and all those guys, and I think that's kind of the trend with a Lou Lamoriello team, that those are the guys he tries to bring in because that's the game that they play. So, I've always admired that in Pageau's game, and he's a guy I wanted them to get leading up to that trade deadline. So when they got him, I was over the moon, and I think, he's had his bumps here and there for sure. But I think all in all, he's a very important piece to this team.
Excellent. Quick one on Barzal, because I feel like every week we're defending him a little bit, right?
Yeah, sure.
Last night it was this moment where they're down 4-2, goalie's pulled, and he takes it from behind the Islanders' net and skates early around everyone and gets it in deep. And it turned out he was about 2 minutes and 30 seconds into his shift already when he did that. Now the bad side is extended shift, which got him in trouble.
Right.
The
he was just so nonchalant on that play.
The awe-inspiring part of it is that he's still able to do that.
Right.
And if you're not a big fan, go watch your team when he has to sit out a couple of games with.
Of course.
So I'll just come back to again, because there isn't much of a depth chart for people who could carry it.
Oh, no question about it.
Actually, I don't think there's anybody, but
still very much a Matt Barzal fan. But look,
I'm not saying it at you.
I get it. I get it. But it was almost comical the way he played that. Yeah. I mean, which is probably just speaks to how dead he was on the shift, right? Like that was the most that he was able to give, because he's not that type of player. He's not a guy who takes shifts off, and he's not a guy who doesn't put the effort in. So yeah, maybe I'm being a little hard on him, but I mean, it led to a back-breaking goal. So I kind of had to, give him a couple of points off for that one.
No, it stood out. It stood out with the reporters. Lane recognized it as well. So what are we up to now? Are we up to the Bruin?
We're going to take a break, and then we're going to do the Bruin. So, folks, that's it for Hero of the Week. Remember, stop into the Huntington Blue Line Deli and Bagels location, mention Hockey Night New York, and get half off the delicious Selly Hero. We're going to take a quick break. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY Live and your favorite podcast providers later on. We'll be right back.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is Hockey Night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow @HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York. The best night of the week for any Islanders fan.
It's time for Questions Brewing, brought to you by Lost Farmer Brewing Company.
That's right, folks. It is time for Questions Brewing, and I happen to be cracking open this juicy farm-squeezed IPA right here, brought to you by Lost Farmer Brewing Company. Fantastic stuff. Here we go. I'm going to take a little swig here.
Maybe a couple I could bring home tonight?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure, no question about it.
So, I was looking for some options.
So Ed, are we active in the chat there? What's going on?
We're good, but chat fired me.
What?
Chat fired me.
Fired you?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, they fired
Chad?
me.
Oh, the chat fired you.
Chat fired me.
Wow. Talk about rough crowds.
I said music is music,
That,
whether it's the Hero of the Week.
Good answer.
Or was it the old
music
rejoiner too?
It's true. Hey, listen, it's fine. It worked out fine. We got a little laugh out of it, so no worries. So why don't you start firing off some of those questions for us?
All righty. Let's start with Coach Lanebird here.
Love him. It's my favorite name in the chat. And guys and girls out there in the chat, I encourage you to come up with funny, creative names. If not, that's fine. But Coach Lanebird is one of my favorites.
So he says, Bo has one more season after this with a cap hit of $4.15 million. What do you think his next contract will look like, and will it be with the Isles?
Okay, I'll take this one. I don't know. Next question. I don't know because I think we talked about him a little bit last week during the questions, if I remember right. But look, he's obviously been sticking out for the wrong reasons so far this season, right? He still hasn't reached that next level of his game. He's teased us a couple of times over the seasons he's been here, and I don't think I'm ready to talk contract numbers about him yet because it's either unfinished or not enough. And to be perfectly honest with you, if he continues to play the way he is now, are you really that concerned about it when his contract is up? In the sense that, I mean, I feel like he needs to bring more to earn that next contract with the New York Islanders. And I don't even know if it'll be the $4.15 million or whatever it is this season if he continues to struggle. I hope that none of that comes to pass. I hope that he ends up figuring it out, and I certainly think he can. But right now, it's really tough to put a number on that.
What I would say is that his next main contract, like if he does another multi-year in some way, when he's eligible to, it's the rare case where it will be smaller. I normally would laugh at somebody
might
saying
track that way right
a lot
now.
of times it's like you just get renewed or you get picked up at that 1 year, you come back at the same number. But, he is not over 4 implies more production on offense.
I think that was Lou buying some years, hoping to buy some years.
Correct. Thinking that he was a 6
He was on
point
the up and up
range, right? Consistently. So I don't, barring a miraculous change, I think it'll be smaller. Again, good NHL player, could be a good NHL player, and he's going to play in this league for a while. But if I'm going to make a prediction, I'm going to say his next, major contract, or one that's just not a 1 year rollover until he becomes unrestricted, will be at a lower number.
Okay, there you have it. Next question, Edzo.
Next one is from Andremi, 13. I'll just call you Andre from now on.
Sure.
What do you? This is kind of a two-parter.
Okay.
What do you think of the possibility of the Islanders pursuing Bo Horvat? And the second part is would moving Barzal to wing be better for the team, as his face-off abilities are quite poor?
Chris, you want to go first on this one, or you want me to take it?
Barzal's playing where he should be playing.
Okay. Okay.
Bo Horvat's name has started to come up.
Yep.
I'll let you take. I'll let you tackle. I get the only thing I'll say about Bo Horvat. Tough to say. Is he's one of those guys I think is going to fall into the grass is always greener. He's going to, and I'm not too sure he's there. Go ahead.
The enticing thing about Bo Horvat right now, I think the last time I looked at his stat line, he had 14 goals. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where he was at. So obviously that's the sort of number, if you're a New York Islander fan, you like to see, because that's through 19 games. That's pretty. That's pretty to look at.
There's a big downside to him doing that well, right?
Well, what's that?
The cost to get him.
Well, of course, Chris.
They don't have much to give up.
Well, that's been well documented on this show.
So I let you answer. Now I'm going to shut. Now I'm going to.
Well, I wasn't finished.
Okay, go ahead.
So look, he's got about 14 goals in the season right now, if not more, if he scored since I looked at the stat line. But he's a center, which Chris kind of cleared up already. That Matt Barzal's not moving anywhere else. Does Brock Nelson go to the wing? I don't think he should. He's done it before in past seasons, but I don't think that's something he should do. Can Bo Horvat play the wing? I don't watch the Vancouver Canucks enough to know if they've used him on the wing. So is that even a fit? Look, he's a guy who is a productive, good NHL player. He's a leader, right? So is he a guy you're upset that you get? Probably not. But if you have your choices, if Patrick Kane is part of that list when you're going down it, you're probably looking at Patrick Kane before you're looking at Bo Horvat, right? And as Chris noted, do they even have the assets to get him? Well, and who do they have the assets to get? That's another big question.
Yeah, my thing is you have a better chance getting a guy who's struggling a little bit because they only have so many pieces to give up. So, but look, on the bright side, it's November 20th. They are in the playoff race. We believe they've shown enough already that they will make the playoffs. Certainly will be very much in that mix. Therefore, they've earned the right, or they will have earned the right to be a player at the trade deadline. And we've brought up Bo Horvat and Patrick Kane on one show.
I think that's
it's not even U.S. Thanksgiving.
That is a great key. We're talking about adding, not subtracting.
Correct.
Ed, next question.
Well, back to Patrick Kane. This one's from Mel Armenia. I begrudgingly read this one. She called for my immediate termination, basically. So
just keeping you in check, man. Appreciate that, Mel.
Apparently a friend of Sean's, you should note.
Long-time listener.
I'll read it because
love Mel.
Still here, regardless of what you wish for, Mel.
You're a professional.
We have no choice. Who else is going to do the job? We have no choice.
So, what is your trade package for Patrick Kane? Must include one current player.
Do that to us.
Wait, one prospect.
Well, of course it's going to. Minimum. Too early for me. I don't think that we'd be breaking any ground.
And I just don't think I'm good enough at this to properly guess. And, like, you don't want to insult the Chicago Blackhawks or another team when you talk about this. Because, look, it's always easy for us. I think we joked about this last week. Beauvillier, Bailey, let's say Simone Holmstrom and a first-round pick for Patrick Kane. I don't know. Does that get it done? Probably not.
It's going to cost at least 2 high picks. So definitely 1 first rounder.
Okay, there you go.
And perhaps another one or like a second or something like that, because Chicago still needs those assets. I know they've got some in the trades that they made, some that were
why did they give away Koch to Montreal? I don't understand.
Yeah. So you start with that, then a top prospect, and then that one person off the Islanders roster actually might be more like the Islanders saying you have to take a Bo or you have to take a Bailey to make things like that work. I would just say it's not a cop-out, but you're looking at 3 to 4 assets. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. That would include at least 1 first-round pick and a second pick. That'll be high. As for those other things, I think it's just too early. It's not a cop-out to just say it's just a little too early to name them.
No, I think the most valuable commodities the Islanders probably have in their stable are their draft picks, and that's something that Lou's been giving away a lot. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to suffer, quote-unquote, suffer through doing that again if you want to land a guy like that, because I think you're going to have to go deep into your draft pool if you really want to land a guy who's going to make a difference.
The other problem that I think the Islanders could have is, I know this will be a hard no across the board from most fans, and it would be for me too. The reason why I think a Kane trade might be tough is that Chicago might say, well, because you don't have that clear-cut top prospect that you want to give us, then we do have to take Pulak or Pelech or something that would be deemed absurd, and then therefore make the trade not doable. So
that would be interesting, but thankfully we have more time between now and the trade deadline to worry about that. But
we will milk the heck out of this for the next 4 months. Don't care, especially if you keep on asking the questions.
100%. So thanks for the question, Mel. What do you got next, Ed?
Coach Lambert again. He says, last week I jokingly asked if the Devils would run away with the Metro. But are we at least ready to acknowledge that they have pretty much locked down a playoff spot? Well, not great news for the rest of the division.
Well, I think the New Jersey Devils have locked in their 2002 Islander position in the sense that even if they go 500 for the rest of the year, right, exactly, they go 500 the rest of the year and they probably squeeze into a wild card spot. I'm floored. I didn't think they were at this point yet. I thought that they would come back down. Yeah, there you go, floored. Floored media. Yeah, there you go. I thought that they were going to come back to earth by now, and they haven't. They keep winning, and they're winning against good teams. So, I mean, look, they're not going to win the next 65 games, but I mean, I think credit where it's due. I don't think the wheels are going to fall off enough where they just plummet to the bottom of the league. You look at teams like Buffalo who have kind of done this before, not to this extent, but they've started off well in the early going. Maybe they rattle off a 9-10 game winning streak or point streak, and you say, hey, maybe this is a team that's finally arrived. And they even did it again this season where they fell back down to earth and they're already back in the bottom of the conference. I don't think the same for the Devils. I think that they have a lot of young star power, and they're getting these victories again against good teams. I don't think they're going to run away with the division. Can they win it? Sure.
No, but the question is, have they locked down a playoff spot? And I would say that they have.
I think, yeah, they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
To my surprise, to my very big surprise, yes. Anything else, Ed?
As far as questions brewing, no, but I'm going to turn this into one because I love it.
Please, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Coach Lambert again.
Oh, okay.
So again with the positivity, talking about Mr. Botta. Can you imagine Christian entertaining the possibility of Patrick Kane coming here?
I mean,
who?
At this point, look, I think Christian would entertain the question, but he'd probably come up with some reasons why the Islanders wouldn't be able to land him, just because that's the heel that he is.
Is forgive me, because I don't get to catch the show every week. Is Christian anti-Patrick because Patrick has some things in his history?
No. Christian is just anti-pro Islanders. He's just anti. Yeah, his part of his shtick on the show is just being a negative Nancy.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's why Coach Lambert.
You're better off not knowing. Don't let it rub off on you.
Right. Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. But you know what? Thankfully, we don't have to worry about it because he's not here.
No. Have you realized we've been having a lot of Christian slander towards the end of these?
I have noticed that his name does keep popping up, which I guess means in some way, even subconsciously, they miss him, right?
Yeah, I mean.
But but listen, Christian is off doing his thing. He's doing a great job for AM New York, and he's always welcome to come back. And it's been great having Chris here, but I'm glad that they're still, they still remember him in the chat. That's very nice. But I think that's going to do it for Questions Bruins. So Ed, great to mediocre job as always.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think we're going to wrap the show up. So why don't you hit that outro music, and we'll get out of here.
Yep.
You want outro this time?
Please.
You don't want rejoiner?
Would you mind? Yeah. Would you mind hitting the proper button this time?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Good luck this week to Joe Scally of Lake Grove on the U.S. national team in the World Cup.
There we go.
World Cup. 3 huge games representing today with my cap.
Love that.
Good luck to Long Island Joe and the whole gang, Christian Pulisic and everybody else.
Does USA have a shot?
They have a shot of getting out of their group, of winning, if we were to make it look like this show, of winning 2 of their 3 games this week to then continue on, and that would be a victory to start.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to that tilt on Friday at 2 o'clock against England. That's going to be a lot of fun. Absolutely. So, folks, with that out of the way, want to send a big thanks to Kevin Kurz of The Athletic for joining us, giving an absolute fantastic spot. And, of course, a big thanks to our sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Remember, stop in there, mention Hockey Night in New York, and get half off the celly. And also a huge thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. And again, speaking of the World Cup, you can stop in there for all the 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. games. Have a great time with their fine beer selections like this juicy IPA right here. Head on over there. Great stuff. Want to thank you all for tuning in live here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. I want to thank everybody for tuning in later on. Chris Botta, where can we find you on social media?
At Chris Botta, NHL on Twitter, as long as it's up.
Right, if it still exists. That's a fair point. You can follow myself at Shoney Hockey. You can follow the show at Hockey Night NY at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So, folks, once again, thank you so much. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe, spread the word, tell your friends. Really appreciate it. For Chris Botta, my name is Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night in New York. Have a great rest of your night.